Hello, hello. We have a special treat, a special guest today with Jamar Jones joining us. Jamar, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited about this one.
Oh, we're going to have some good energy, good conversation. We were already chatting so much before. I was like, okay, we got to hit record. We got to capture some of this stuff.
For sure.
All right, so let me introduce you to Jamar because he is somebody you are definitely going to want to know, and make sure that you check him out after this episode, after listening to this episode, or even pause it. You might even want to do that and check out his social media in between. So Jamar Jones, the visionary force behind Fourevva Media, transforms businesses through the influential power of podcasts. Has worked with esteemed clients like Marcus Lemonis, LLC, VaynerX, Red Bull, and many others. He has secured over $200,000 in sponsorships through his podcast and events. Jamar, a seasoned entrepreneur, podcast host, and national keynote speaker, shares profound insights from his book, Change Your Circle, Change Your Life, which I'm so excited to dive more into on this episode. His impactful and motivational talks delivered to large audiences in an arena, festival grounds, and renowned companies such as BMW and Summerfest Tech focus on personal branding, which we're going to talk about today, podcasting, and marketing strategies. Jamar's community impact includes hosting the historic Lead the Movement Business Conference at Pfizer Forum and the second annual edition at Henry Meyer Festival Park on Summerfest grounds. Recognized nationally with features on Office Hours by David Metzer and a billboard in New York Times Square, which is so cool. I saw you post about that. Jamar is a proud member of Forbes BLK and championing excellence with opportunity for entrepreneurs, marketers, leaders, and creators globally. Like, that is a badass bio, Jamar.
Took me a while to get to that point, but having a bio is so important, which we'll go into that, I'm sure, in this conversation.
Oh, yeah. And I just love it. I absolutely love being able to do those introductions because I want people listening to be like, wow, like this person has done things. And also what we were talking about before we hit record is it is not an easy journey to get there, right? So we're going to dive into all those ups and downs in that roller coaster. But what I really want to start with is I really want to start talking about this personal branding piece, because that really stands out to me as something that obviously you focus so heavily on, and something that, you know, whether you are someone who's working in corporate, so you're somebody who's an entrepreneur running a business, like this is the piece that's so important. So first I wanted to start with what got you so passionate about talking about personal branding?
Yeah, it's funny because I just did a post not too long ago that I've been doing personal branding before personal branding was even a word. And I think it's because as a hip hop artist, when I was doing hip hop for 11 plus years, which I probably should add that in the bio as well.
Yeah.
I probably should.
Yeah, you should.
But when I was doing hip hop, like when you're a musician, you have to build your own personal brand. And so every element of a musician, especially ones that are solo musicians that can't hide behind the band, they have to learn every element to get their name and likeness, for people to like, know, and trust you. And so through those many years of doing that, since I was, 12 years old? 12 years old, and just like learning, studying other artists. Really, entrepreneurship wasn't big back then. So you really couldn't study business leaders. They weren't so outwardly, out there as they are today. So it was studying musicians, entertainers that know how to market themselves. And through doing that, all the way till about 26 years old, I just became ingrained in it. It's a natural skill for me to do at this point. And then when I kind of translated that to when I started my company, I started to learn that not a lot of people know how to do this when it's like second nature for myself. So it was a natural thing for me to be like, hey, and it didn't happen like immediately either for the business. I mean, I really started out with photo and video, which is elements of personal branding, but it wasn't the key focus. But then when I started to market myself as an entrepreneur and the founder of Fourevva Media and got into speaking, had my book and everything like that, people started to be like, dude, I like your brand of what you have going on. And so then I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, there might be a market here to actually teach others about personal branding. So that's how it came to be, is studying others that are amazing at marketing themselves, and I would totally go to entertainers because they solo entertainers for sure, because they are a prime example of how to do it. When you look at their website, you look at their social, you look at what email communications are you receiving from them, what do their events look like, what kind of merch do they have, what kind of feeling does the audience get with them, what kind of videos are they putting out, what does their photos look like. I mean, they are literally a prime example. You think of your favorite artist right now, your favorite solo artist, go to their website, and then that's like a prime example of what personal branding is.
I love this too. And I forgot to mention too, like how we actually met. I don't know how we met very originally, but Jamar's team did my speaker reel for me. So I worked with his team to help create that. And that was honestly, that was a couple years ago now. And what I loved was that emphasis on what that personal brand is. And I know when I came to the studio and we were doing it and asking me these questions, and it was really hard. It's really hard to figure out, like, what are these words that I stand for, and who comes to me, and why do they come to me, and like all these things. But it really got me thinking. And one of the things that I know I struggle with, and I hear other people struggle with as well, is we're all very complex. Like, we don't just have one thing we like to do. And I want to ask you this because I know you have a variety of interests and passions. You do all these different things. How does somebody bring all these pieces of who they are, all these different things that they do, and bring that into their personal brand instead of seeing it as all separate things?
Oh, such a good question, and I'm still learning that myself. Like I don't have. I think that's an evolution thing, though. I think people naturally evolve over time, and they will get into multiple things. I was just talking about this at an event, and I think personal branding first starts within. It has to start within. I talked about like the entertainer, and you're going to look at a lot of external things. Within is where it starts. So when you say, how do you, if you have so many interests, how do you align those all with yourself and your personal brand and not be spread too thin? I think you have to get comfortable with yourself and really dig deep. And the deeper you can dig within your own insecurities, your own fears, your failures, the things that you're scared to talk about, the more you can come at peace with yourself and gain that confidence, gain that wisdom, really say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I want to represent, and I just do this naturally. This is just my gift. That's why, like, oftentimes when people have a personal brand, but you're like, that brand looks a lot like this other person, and it doesn't come off authentic. It doesn't come off real. You know it. People can smell it. They can get that sense immediately. Like, you're not exactly who you say you are. There's something about it, and it's because they haven't dug too deep. They've just emulated somebody else's brand. And I know a lot of, especially business professionals, they see other brands and they try to emulate because they think, oh, that's working for that person. No, you got to do the reverse and go inside and really have some tough conversations with yourself. And I'll just say this really quick story about there was a time in my business. So when I first started my business, I was catering to the people that I knew the most, entertainers. So I would do artist consulting, I would do videos for them, I would do photos, I would go to nightclubs, I would do all this different stuff, all in the entertainment business. But once it started to get into corporate, and I started to do corporate videos, all of a sudden, my demeanor, my dress, the way I dressed, everything about me started to change to try to cater to the corporate world because I thought that would get me more business and be able to go into that direction. What's fascinating is I did that for at least a couple years, and then one day I was like, I can't continue to keep putting on this facade.
Yeah.
Like this. I'm ingrained in music. I'm ingrained in entertainment. That's the core of who I am, and what always draws me in this crazy universe. Crazy way where it just like that just draws me all the time. So the moment I started to just dress the way I wanted to dress, have my hat on, and now I'm going full. I got the shades on and a
I love it.
I'm going full out like
Yeah.
back in the day. But the more I go into that, then all of a sudden people gravitated to that, and then they started to say, hey, I like what this guy stands for. I like the, his
Mm-hmm.
persona. I like this, style. And they gravitate towards that. And then I got more business because of it. So it's a very reverse way of thinking, and it's not like everybody can pull it off. But it's because it's deep within. It has to be deep within you to find these things, and then you just emulate whoever you naturally are. Your uniqueness is the key. Your
Mm-hmm.
uniqueness is the decision. Is your difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hide from it. And once you do figure that out, then you can worry about all the external stuff. But it has to go deep. And like even with your speaker reel, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we started to uncover like more and more questions. Like,
Mm-hmm. And I was like, stop! I just want to talk about like the surface level. Like, what do I
yeah,
do?
I just want to talk about what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But you have to go deep because it's like,
Yeah.
what do you want people to feel? What do you want them to walk away with? Like, who is Julie?
Mm-hmm.
At the core. And the more you can dig in that, I mean, it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard to do this for a lot of people because they have to uncover a lot of traumas and past challenges. But it is the core to unlock your personal brand.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I want to like pause and like I'm gonna go back and like re-listen to this because you said so many powerful things around. I mean, some keywords, being authentic, that uniqueness, and something so important that I know I talk to people about again, wherever you're at, your career growth, your professional growth right now. So many people are trying to show up like everybody else. Like, oh yeah, they're successful. I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to do it that way. It comes off fake. You don't feel confident. And then what happens is, especially when I'm helping people with like their presence and their presentation and things like that, is if you are trying to show up like somebody you're not, then you are attracting the wrong people into you. And then you gave a perfect example of if you're trying to come off as somebody else, then people, your network that you're surrounded with or opportunities that are coming to you are not going to feel aligned. You're not going to feel confident then, and you're going to like lift your head up at some point and go, I don't even want to be around these people. This isn't even the type of work I want to be doing. Or you're not going to feel like you've been fulfilling as much to maybe what they were expecting because it's so inauthentic. So that's so important to start. Obviously, I think it's important, even the name of the podcast is It Starts With You. Like before we do all the external stuff, you got to go within. So if somebody's listening and they're going, okay, I hear you, because that is uncomfortable. It's much easier to just like do the external stuff. So if somebody's listening, they're going, okay, I'm feeling this. Like what type of questions, I guess, could they be asking themselves to help kind of pull some of this out?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, it's deep. I think that one question you could ask yourself is if I'm let's say you're in a circle with a bunch of other people, and they're all having conversations. Once you walk away from the circle, what do you want people to say about you? What do you want them to remember you by? Sometimes you only have a few seconds. Sometimes you have a couple minutes. So what is that one thing you want them to remember you by? And as you go deeper into that question, we'll start to really unlock some of the insecurities and maybe some of the things that like you go really deep on. Another thing is, what do you ultimately like? What do you do flawlessly that others struggle with? Like your gift. What is your gift? Everybody has one. Some people just haven't found theirs yet. Like they haven't unlocked this. Like I'm a comic book guy, so so this is for all the comic book lovers out there. But the X-Men are like mutants, right? And they have to like find their power, and it like comes sometime earlier on in life or later on in life. And they're like, oh my God, I can fly. Like what is going
Yeah.
on? But usually that power is unlocked by some kind of trauma or some kind of mechanism that gets them to activate that. So it's oftentimes like human beings as well, where you need to dig deeper into the trauma or the challenges or the things that you have trouble facing, the fears, to unlock what is your gift of who you are, and then just dive into that deeper. Also, another great question, I'll leave this last question, is what do people just start for like a month, start writing down what people say about you, that maybe you're not like you're not really, you're kind of taking for granted. So like, what do people are constantly saying about you? not to say that you have to go, exactly what everybody thinks of you, but what do they constantly say? So I'll give you an example where a lot of people for the longest time, and I didn't know this was a thing, but for the longest people were like, dude, your smile is infectious. Your laugh is infectious. And I was like, I never had really had focus on that. But once I figured that out, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, my photography, I should have some cool photography where, I'm smiling or I'm laughing or, I'm trying to build that connection because for some reason that's a connection point for people. So just tapping into what are people always saying about you, and then just try to reveal that a little bit more because that is that like hidden connection point. That's maybe a gift. It's not always a skill. A gift could be just something very natural, an expression. It could be a passion, a talent. It could be a lot of different things. But just tapping into that and asking yourself those 3 questions, I think that will help you at least start that journey.
Oh, that's so good. And I mean, I don't do comic books much, but I am familiar with like X-Men.
Yeah.
And I literally got goosebumps when you were talking about that because how true is that? So many people try and hide away and like shove down personal things that have happened to them or that trauma. And oftentimes when you bring that to the surface, like that's the thing that was the catalyst or that was the activator to the thing you're doing now. So I love that it's like unlocking that and giving people some of those things that they can do. And, for me, I think one of the greatest compliments that someone says is like, oh, I love your energy. Energy is like a hard thing to, like quantify for people. Like, okay, this is the exact steps that I took for people to like my energy, but it's just like your authenticity. So when someone tells me they like my energy, I'm like, I take that as the highest compliment because it means that I'm bringing, to light into the room the essence of like what I want. So we've got those internal pieces, but what I know is that people are like, yeah, okay, the internal stuff, I'm going to do that, sure, but also give me some like external stuff that we can do, right? I know that's how people are. We know that they've got to work on the internal stuff, but what are some of those like external things on how people can actually be building their personal brand as well as they're getting more clarity on who they are?
Yeah, for sure. So I have been preaching this for a few years now, but get a professional photo shoot. Just get a really good photo shoot, and none of them just old headshot type, photos. Express yourself, really be yourself in those photos. Do maybe different activities. A really cool person that we worked with, that we didn't personally do the photos, but, kind of the overall branding and kind of inspiration behind it was Tegan. And she was scared of the camera, like, but she was scared of it. She didn't want nothing to do with it. She's like, I'm an introvert, Jamar. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
And I said, I understand, but you have to, if you want to build that brand for yourself, you have to get this photo shoot done. So she went out and got the photo. She's from Chicago, so she got the photo shoot done. But her photos are fantastic. I mean, she has all these different photos. She's a career coach. So she does a lot of different things in that area, but her photos are so electrifying. Like she has these like power poses, and then she has ones where she's like at a desk and she's like showing her expression, laughing, having a good time. So get that photo done because I literally have booked speaking gigs off of a photo. I'm not even kidding. My point one where I'm like this, literally at least 5 or 6 gigs just off that photo alone. They're like, I can just feel the energy from that photo.
I know that picture. I've seen it. It's very powerful. Yeah.
They're like, I gotta have him in. I don't know what he talks about, but I gotta have him in. It's just a powerful thing. So that's one. Get a professional photo shoot. Number 2, that bio and update your LinkedIn. I know there's a lot of business professionals on here, small business entrepreneurs. Update your LinkedIn and get a power bio. Not all that fluff. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care. I mean, unless you're deep into a technical aspect of it, but don't write it like a resume. Write it like a bio, like you about to go on Good Morning America. I need you to be powerful in who you are, and don't be afraid to say it. State some failures, but also state how did you overcome that? Where are the successes? Why should people listen to you? And just jot down all your big achievements and just make them sound as big as possible. Because you need to build that inspiration for people when they read that and they go to your LinkedIn page and you got that professional photo shoot, so you got your nice picture, you got a killer bio, and then just the branding and then the marketing around that. So how are you pushing out content? Are you doing videos, photos? What are you saying to people? Just the content doesn't have to be really overthought. Just what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Even if you work at a job, it's crazy because on TikTok, there's people that just work like at, let's say, Subway. And they just got a live stream just running, and they're just making sandwiches.
And people watch it. They're fascinated by it.
Thousands of people just watching this person make a Subway sandwich.
Yep.
It's crazy. So don't overthink it, because you may think what you do is boring and mundane and administrative, or like no one really cares about this. But to somebody that's not in your industry and maybe just outside of it, finds it fascinating. So just start to record your day. Maybe talk about, hey, what were some challenges you had during your day and how did you overcome them? And even in the smallest form, even if it's like, hey, got this email from this person. Even if you don't have to use names or anything, just say, hey, I got this email. This was kind of the topic or the subject, and this is how I overcame it. They came at me at this kind of way. I approached it in this way. And then, that happens a lot of times in my job where I have to do X, Y, and Z, and that's why it's important to do X, Y, and Z. And then you just gave a piece of content that is helpful to somebody else, and showcase that you have a authority in your own space, in your own right. And you just have to share your day. You could take a random picture of the office, or if you're work from home, you could just take a picture of your desk, you type in anything, just share your moments. Just share your moments. And that's the easiest way. I would say, just as a starting point, I don't want to overload people with how to get started, but those are the three most, that's something you could do right away. The photo shoot, will take a second, but just those are things you can do right now to start to change your personal brand.
And I love those. I love the tips, and I love specifically talking about LinkedIn, right? Because I push people on this too, of like, if you're trying to build your presence, your personal brand, especially if you're, small business entrepreneur, like the connections on there. And I get pushback sometimes from people depending upon how comfortable they are with LinkedIn. So I actually want to have a transparent conversation on this, because I've heard this multiple times from people that I've worked with when I've talked about LinkedIn, and like, you can just see that they get like this, LinkedIn, I don't want to be on LinkedIn. And I was like, well, what's coming up for you right now? And almost word for word, what was said to me was, when I think of LinkedIn, I think of old white dudes in suits. That's literally what was said to me. Like, I think of old white dudes in suits. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Now we need to have a conversation on who are you connected with?
Who's in your circle?
Right. Who's in your circle, which is why I want to tie this in, because I know this is a big thing you talk about. And it's been said to me multiple times, almost in the same way. And so we had to have a conversation around, well, yes, and like, there's a lot of other people on LinkedIn. And if you're not feeling connected to that group, that vibe, if that's not your people that you're working with, or what you're not connecting with, like, there's a lot of other people on LinkedIn. So I was like, that's just who you're connected to. And I was like, that's not what my LinkedIn looks like. I have a diverse, large variety of content, people, topics that I see on LinkedIn. And so if someone has this kind of perception, whether it's about LinkedIn or maybe it's like the circle of people they're with, like, give us some tips, because I know this is an area, obviously you write about it in your book, like, how do people go about changing this and surrounding themselves with people that are going to help them level up and feel connected to?
Yeah. And this is kind of a layered question, I think, because you first started with social media, and then it's about, okay, just naturally the people that I'm around. So first with social media, I think it's very simple. And Gary Vee actually says this in the most simplistic way. So I'm kind of regurgitating a little bit of his thought philosophy around it. But, social media is an empty vessel. People put in the content and put in everything around it. A lot of people want to blame social media. Well, people are just filling it up with content. And if no one posted, we wouldn't care about it. There's nothing else that's there. People are fueling the content and the activities and the conversations. So if you think that, whatever platform you're on is something and you don't like it, guess what? You have the power to change it. You could easily unfollow every single person.
Mm-hmm.
And go and search and follow others that are doing amazing things. It's just like your Netflix. You start watching crime series, you're going to get a bunch of crime series on there. It is an algorithm, and it's just giving you more of what you search. So obviously, whoever that person is, they're searching, they're
Right.
connected or searching with a certain type of demographic, and that's all they see. And because I know people that are doing literally nightclubs on LinkedIn. So don't tell me that there's only, just this
One
one
certain type of,
demographic.
yeah.
On LinkedIn. And this is for all platforms, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's even the case, even if I heard that, okay, there's just old white men that are on LinkedIn, cool. Well, I'm going to come on LinkedIn and just do my thing, and I'm going to stand out because I'll have tons of, tons of opportunities to stand out if that is the truth. But it's not. It's not the truth. So to change your circle, you can do a few things. So first, the biggest thing is that you have to realize and kind of evaluate your current circle, because a lot of it is people are unaware about their situations. They're unaware about their day-to-day activities. They're unaware of even how they got to where they're at today. Most people, actually. So a lot of people will, and you've heard this before, where somebody blinks and all of a sudden, like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? What happened? Why have I been working at this job for this long? What is this all I'm going to do? What's going to happen? Why am I only going to volleyball on Thursdays and then I have no other activities outside of my life? My kids have, taken over my whole life. So you get these like crazy moments where it just all hits you because they're unaware through the day-to-day of exactly how they're getting there. And they don't have a goal. They're not looking at their life from an outside perspective, where somebody else is looking at their life. That's why coaching is always interesting, because you coach others because you're looking and analyzing at what their situation is. But oftentimes coaches have a hard time coaching themselves because they're not in
Truth.
that. This is the truth. And this is why even I help people with personal brands, but I have business coaches. I have other coaches that I mentors that help analyze what I have going on, because I need that third person perspective. Everybody needs it. Every single person needs it. So to get to analyze your current circle, you have to be intentional about it. So I say, take a piece of paper, write down every single name that is family, friends, and I would say like in the past month that you've talked to. Look through your text messages, family, friends, close acquaintances, coworkers that you work with on a consistent basis. Just the people in your core. You're looking for a core. Don't talk about Jimmy from high school way back in the day. You ain't hit him up in 10 years. He's not a part of your life. So the people that are actually a part of your life, and then simply put down a plus or a minus next to their name. Are they adding to your life, or are they subtracting from your life? It's a very simple thing, and they're not going to see this piece of paper. So don't think like, oh my God, man, if Tony saw this, man, I don't know, and I can't upset Tony, blah, blah, blah. Well, if Tony's draining your energy every day, all day, the phone calls, texts, every time you're with him, he's negative, put a negative right next to his name. He's not adding to your life. He's not adding to it. So, and then simply add up the pluses and then the minuses after that, and just see what that total is. If you have a lot of negatives in your life, it may be time to start to change your circle. It may be time to start to expand. Maybe just get a little bit more reach. See what other opportunities are out there. If it's a lot of pluses, then that's fantastic. But then you have to ask yourself the really hard question. You put down that they're all pluses. Are you actually growing? Are you actually growing? And only you can really answer that, depending on what your goals and what your aspirations are, and what do you deem as success. Success is not only just defined by money or by status. It is defined by however you want to define success. Some people just want comfort. Some people just want to achieve one aspiration goal in their life, and that's it. And they're like, hey, if I get that, I'm good. I'm off to the sunset. I don't care about anything else, and then I'll just coast. But if that's your success, then that's great. But then you have to really ask yourself, are you really growing? And then you have to say, hey, how can I get into these new circles? And that's where I
Mhm.
think following people on social media is fantastic because you have to feel the brain. You need to fuel the brain with motivation, inspiration, and people that are doing it in the way that you can receive that's positive. Um, Another way is that start to research different groups to go into. Get a part of this speaker space. Get a
Mhm.
part of different Facebook groups. There's tons. Meetup.com. You can literally go and search whatever topic thing that you want to get into and just show up to a meeting. Go to events, conferences. There's tons of ways to just and there's free avenues and there's also paid avenues. There's different ways to just show up, and that's the biggest thing. Show up,
Mhm.
and just start to get involved in these different groups, and then eventually you'll start to slowly change it. There's a ton of other ways, but I don't want to. Once again, a lot of
Mhm.
times people listen to me and they're like, "Dude, my freaking mind's blown," because there's too much stuff. So I've been trying to be intentional about
Mhm.
just taking a few steps, and then once you take those few steps, we can help you take a few more.
Yeah. No, I love it. And like the process, I honestly, that first one though, and I'm sure those of you listening are just like, oof. Like I had that moment where I was like, oof, if I do that activity, sometimes you've got to like really face these things you've been thinking about people you're surrounded with. And now you're going to write it down on like plus or a minus, but how big of an impact that can have, right? If you find yourself constantly drained, the negative, and surrounded by it, it's first who am I surrounded by, and then also how am I potentially contributing to it, that now I'm surrounded with these people. But I absolutely love that. It's like first you got to really get clear on evaluating your current circle, and then figuring out like maybe where is there a miss? Where do I feel like I don't have people challenging me or someone to confide in, so that new circles, and then researching groups. When you started doing this in your life, what changed for you?
Everything, everything,
Mm-hmm.
everything. Honestly, when I started to look, it was like it's kind of crazy because I think when I had this whole idea of the change your circle, change your life type thing, it really started with mindset first. Because so when I was like 23, 24, I was doing music and stuff. I was working a job in IT um, as a support technician to start, and then I worked my way up to be an IT manager. Um, what happened is that there was an interesting time period where I joined this network marketing company. Um, and they're all about like getting your mind right, like
Mm-hmm.
so you can go out and sell.
Yeah, right.
But they have like these groups, these meetings, and they're like, read this book, watch these videos, and and they have conferences and like, just it's all around being around the right group of people. But they kept feeding me like, listen to this successful book, from this entrepreneur or this person that, has done really well in their life. And I started to just consume, which I never had really done before. I started to
Mm-hmm.
consume. But then the other flip side is in my company, I had a good friend of mine, but he was also my manager at the time. He started to just kind of feed me the same thing like, hey, you should probably start looking into this, or what other seminars could you go to grow as a leader? And I started to learn how to deal with difficult people, how to deal uh, with a disgruntled, employee or manager, maybe that you're
Mm-hmm.
not vibing with. Um, how to just become a better leader. How do you communicate differently to get across? I learned about DISC. I started to learn about all these like mindset things. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like mind games almost, but it's like I learned about how people process things, but then at the same time, I'm getting like this inspiration, motivation from like entrepreneurship and success. And I'm like, okay. And I started to mold all that in together where I started to be like, dude, who am I around, man?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like
Yeah.
I'm not getting the right. If I'm getting this information, and that came from somebody randomly that kind of introduced me, and then a friend of mine kind of got me into the network marketing thing, and then if I never got that job, I probably would never have that opportunity to learn and grow. But really, it wasn't the job. It was my manager at the time that really saw more in me than I saw in myself, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that's so critical. And so it started with the mind first, and then you start to like wonder like, who am I around? And that's where it really started for me. So it was like 24, 23 to like 25. It was life changing. And then I started to apply it to my music business, and like I just applied everything I was learning, how to negotiate. There's a ton of skill sets that I just learned for like at least 4 years of just straight learning.
And that's like that, even that when you say that age, I mean, that's pretty young to be, it's like there's so many people who are much further along in their careers who do not have this. I mean, it is kind of like this skill, right? Because of being able to put yourself in rooms and around people who, are going to push you and challenge you, or you're going to like, I always think of when I go to networking events and you've got like you don't really know anyone yet, and there's like these groups of people talking, and you've got some people that just kind of go and insert themselves and start talking.
Yeah.
And then like I'm always the person who's like, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like if you're that
Me too.
person, it's like putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions to like go no inch a little bit closer to that group and just kind of like start contributing. And a lot of people, it's a skill set, and it can bring up a lot of like anxiousness for people. And so
Yep.
to learn, like the sooner you can learn that, because as I have now learned, especially in entrepreneurship, I mean, it always is about who you know, but just putting yourself out there more and meeting people who, you're going to change and evolve in your values and how you want to spend your time, and being able to be surrounded with people. It's like if you don't do it, it's going to be really hard to be successful.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, the other thing is too, like I was doing music and stuff, so but I had booked all my own shows. I did hundreds, and like the biggest peak of my hip hop career was I was doing 100 shows a year, and I did all the bookings myself. And the thing I learned about that is that I actually, as I was learning this stuff, I could put it into practice right away. I started to learn about how to negotiate. Okay, this person is a high D, with disc, and then so like, okay, I need to be able to have this approach with communication. And then I'm reading like success books, and like how people approach the things, and I'm just applying it to my music business right away and starting to like slowly see results of how I'm approaching it. And so I think that's another piece is like you could learn all day, but you have to apply this stuff. You have to try.
Yes, you have to do it.
Yeah, you have to do it. You just do it.
Just do it. I see that two people get stuck in that, like they just learn, they consume. They're going to listen to this podcast, they're going to read a book on leadership, and they just keep consuming. Like, well, nothing's changing.
Yeah.
You have to take the action then to follow up, and that's not going to be comfortable right away.
It won't be. It won't be. And so that's, if anything people take away from this, just you have to take action. You have, I mean, you just have to. Even if it's like on the smallest thing from either what Julie or what myself has said, just take action on even the smallest thing. And just, that's how you're going to inch a little bit more and more towards where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you look at Jamar, I mean, just all of the things that you've done with, obviously doing the speaking, with, the book that you have, with the events that you have, with the podcast studio, like all of these things is built through you getting in front of people, through connections, through changing your circle of people that you're around. And so if you want to be like Jamar, which we all do, right? Take this as an example and everything that he shared with us. So Jamar, this was such an incredible conversation. I feel like we have so many like offshoots of other things we could talk about. We're going to keep it honed into this, highlight personal brand. If you're somebody who's like, oh, I'm trying to figure this out, start with the internal, really asking yourself those questions. And once you get more clear on that, then you can start kind of sprinkling in some of those external things. Like maybe it's LinkedIn, getting that branding shoot, bringing more of your essence onto your LinkedIn. And then going along with that is figuring out who's in your circle. So check out some of those activities that, Jamar mentioned around who do you have surrounding you right now, and maybe where do you feel like there's a gap that you could find new circles, and you start with that and you just build the foundation, and it's going to keep growing. So thank you so much. I always love to ask, one of the last questions is, the name of the podcast is It Starts With You. So what does It Starts With You mean to you?
Look, you're the only one that can decide what your future holds. It's everything that we talked about is either from our own personal experiences and things that we've learned along the way, and it has to start with you to do something. Oftentimes people are talking, yapping all day. It starts with you to actually take action. What are you going to do? People can complain all day, but it has to be you that says, I'm going to actually do this. I'm not going to receive this negativity every single day anymore. I'm not going to let it affect me. You have that power. You have the power to really shape and mold your own reality, but you have to do it. It doesn't matter how many people tell you to do it. You have to actually take the action. So that's what it means for me. Just do it. Stop complaining and just get to it.
I love it. I love that kind of tough. That's what I tell people. I'm like, a little bit of that tough love, like saucy side that I bring out even with the title, because it's like you can complain, you can, want it so much, but you have to take the action. And when you start doing it and other people can't give it to you, other people can't do it for you, it has to start with you doing it. And so many great examples of that and what you shared with us. So how can people stay connected to you? Where can they find you? Share with us where they can find you and also what you have going on right now that you want to share with the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is the best place to get connected to me, or fourevvamedia.com. That's FOUREVA media.com. We have tons of different things on there. You can sign up for our newsletter just to start to get tapped into resources, updates, and events. Right now, I got a lot of stuff cooking this year. I got a lot of stuff cooking that I'm brewing up. I'm really all about partnerships this year. So I'm trying to figure out, like, with my unique, audience and network, how can I, curate experiences? How can I really drive relationships, and ultimately, like, help others grow? So we are doing the Lead the Movement business conference again. It's actually all around personal branding this time.
Oh, nice.
Content creators, influencers. It's a very custom curated experience, about a 3-day experience, and then we're having a virtual event a few weeks later. We're bringing some of the biggest and brightest people to talk about content creation, brand building, how to get sponsors, brand deals, speaking engagements, etc. So if you are interested in that, sign up to our newsletter. You'll get plugged in. We've done this conference twice already, had amazing results. We're going to do it again, but a little bit more tightly, curated. And just bring an amazing experience to Milwaukee. So it's going to be fantastic.
That's amazing. Yeah, and we'll make sure that we drop the links in the show notes so that you can stay connected to Jamar's LinkedIn and the newsletter. We definitely want to do that so you can follow along, whether it's an event you're going to want to attend, if you're going to want to sponsor it. Think about how you can bring in, this type of thing into your events, to your team, to your company culture, because this personal branding piece is so important. Obviously, with the podcasting, all of that, you can help people to really get their voice out there. So thank you so much for joining us. And for all of you listening, I hope that you take away one, if not way more, things that you're going to start taking action on. Make sure that you share this out, tag us. Thank Jamar for sharing this and coming on the podcast by tagging him and letting him know what really stood out for you, what helped. He's put so much effort into the content that he does and the book and these things. So let him know what was really helpful for you. And thank you all. Remember that it starts with you.